Hello, this is Nicholas Pellegrino from asileFX, and welcome to What's New in Vue 6 Infinite. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you all of the new features and tools of Vue 6 Infinite, and there are some very cool new tools in the new release, so let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to start out by taking a look at some of the more obvious new features in Vue, one being the interface, which is now a completely different color, which in my opinion, looks a little bit better, but if you are more used to the Vue 5 interface and you want to go back to more of that blue with lighter gray, we can go to the File Options, and under General Preferences, we can select Interface Colors. Now, this allows us to actually customize Vue entirely with specific colors, or we can go back to the Vue 5 blue interface, which is not customizable. So if you are more comfortable with working in the older interface, you can always go ahead and change that back. Now let's take a look at our new handle modifiers, or our modifier gizmos, which now have been implemented into Vue. And I'm just going to load in a pyramid right now. Just a simple pyramid object, and I'm using just a basic sky right now from one of the asileFX sky collections. And there's also some of those skies included on the CD-ROM, so you can load some of those in as well. But I'm just using this right now as a backdrop for the scene. But we're going to take a look at these new handle modifiers. We will see that we have, once we're selected in the top view, we can see all these new different options. Well, the top one is for our parent transformation. In other words, it allows us to manipulate our object specifically on its original axis. So in other words, if we go ahead and select rotate, which is our second one here, because we have move, rotate, and scale, which I'll show you how those work in a sec. But I'm going to just go ahead and rotate this off to the side, and we're going to go back to move and take a look at these modifiers for move. So now we can still move on the original Y location of this object, so it's still facing the same direction of the axes. Or we can go to global and actually move it back where it's reset. And then we also have a camera on the bottom, which allows us to move back and forth across the camera, and closer and farther away, and then of course up and down. And that's specifically related to where the camera is positioned. So that's really cool, that new camera mode there. And we also have our local transformation. Now, local and parent seem the same right now, but when we have multiple objects in the scene, it changes just a little. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this pyramid shape and paste it by using Control-C and Control-V on the keyboard. I'm going to change this to global transformation, and I just want to move the new pyramid, so I'm going to go down to the layer panel down here and select the pyramid 1, which would be the copy. And I also want to do a little bit of rotation here, so I'm going to select that copy pyramid, and I am going to set this to parent right now with rotation. Undo, and make sure we're grabbing the handles, because our original resize handles are still there, the same ones as Vue 5. So let's take a look now, and we can see with our local coordinates on move, we can see the handles pointing that way on this pyramid, and the other way on the other. But let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to select the pyramid 1 first, which is the copy, and then hold down shift and click on the other one. Now that we have local set, what we can actually do is go and rotate these, and instead of them rotating together, they're actually rotating individually. But if we go to parent, then what's going to happen is it's going to rotate around the first object that was selected, which was the copy pyramid. And now if we change this to global, you'll see that the rotation handle gets put in the center, and we can rotate them together, and of course the same with camera along that specific rotation for the camera. If we change this back to move, now we can move both these objects together. But if we change it to local, you'll see that the axes are still the same. So if we move the x, both of these objects are moving on the x-axis, but they're moving on their own specific x-axis. So let's go ahead and click on pyramid 1, and we can see the x-axis is moving that way, and the other pyramid is moving the other way. So the copy is actually pyramid 1, and the first pyramid we made is just pyramid. So we have the x-axis actually pointing different directions. So if we select both of these, it still remains with... actually, delete... I have to make sure we select just the pyramids and not the camera as well. But if we go back to that local, we'll see that it's still moving on that specific one. Same thing with the Y, and of course the Z is going to be the same because there's no offset. But very cool new ways to manipulate objects in View. Let's take a look at our scale. Of course, rotation works overall just exactly the same. So we're going to focus on scale right now because rotation is pretty easy to figure out. We have a handle for each of our specific axes, and that of course changes depending on global or local or parent. So let's just go ahead and select one of these pyramids. Let's select the copy pyramid, and let's take a look at our scale function. We actually have the ability to scale it sideways at its original angle, and in View 5 you could not do this. Once you rotated an object, you had to rotate it back to position the original axes in order for it to stretch correctly on the right position. So now we can use these handle modifiers and actually go in there and, depending on the coordinates, just locally do this, and it's a lot easier than it would be to do this within View 5. Even though you wouldn't necessarily have to rotate it back to that original position, it was often much quicker and easier to do it that way. So now we've ruled out that completely with the new global and local systems with these little gizmo modifiers. So these are really fantastic. Let's take a look at the inside of the scale here. What we can actually do is if we go to the center, it will overall scale our whole object and scale it equally. And if we go to these little side buttons down here, where we just have, I'll just go ahead and make this a little bit larger. We can zoom in here so we can see a little bit better. And we can just use these one sections to scale it on. Right now, I'm scaling it on the X and the Z only by using that part of the modifier. If I come over here, we will use the Z and the Y. So now it's just scaling on those two axes. And then I can also go ahead and rotate our camera. And make sure we're going to the camera mode. It'll be a little bit easier to see. And we could also do it on, of course, the other axes as well. So there's a lot we can do with it. It's pretty simple to use and get a hang of. Once you do get a hang of it, you'll find that you're using it a lot more than you would expect, because they really are a huge addition to View 6 and workflow overall. Now we also have some new ways of moving the camera around by using the mouse. And what I can do is actually right mouse click, and we can rotate around, which we could do in View 5. But now if we use the scroll button, we can actually move the camera in and out. And it's not changing the focal length, it's actually moving the camera. So we can use the scroll button on the mouse to move the camera, right mouse to pan, and then actually if we hold down Shift and click, Shift and right mouse click, then we can pan and move back and forth and actually move the camera. So we can do all these operations now with Shift and the mouse. And if you have a 5-button mouse, you can program one of those buttons to Shift and make it a lot quicker. I also want to note now that our preview bar that we have on the side over here actually stays fixed to however you save it and close out within View. Before, every time you opened up View, it would automatically put it to the default, which was a very small preview. But if you prefer working with a large preview, as I do, I like to pull out the bar a little bit farther, and now View actually remembers that the bar was pulled out. So every time you start up View, it will remember where that bar is, and you'll have a much larger preview. So if you're used to working with a larger preview, that's a great new addition. And there's just one more thing I'm going to cover in this chapter, and that is the new alignment tool. To get myself sort of situated back and where the grid's at, I'm going to go ahead and just create a new scene. Use that same sky, and click OK, and not save. So now we're all reset and have a whole new scene to work with. But we're going to take a look at the alignment tool, which is located just above where we have a wireframe selection. So let's go ahead and just load in a couple of objects. Just going to do a sphere and another sphere. And now I'm going to select both of the spheres, and we're going to take a look at this alignment tool, which now rules out the old alignment tools that we had, which were all specifically buttons for different combinations. And now we can actually have a tool that we can go ahead and select exactly what we want. And it's actually real-time update. So when we click on the different options, we will see it updated in the scene. Of course, we don't have a lot of movement right now on the other axes. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this out, and we're going to move around these objects just a little bit so that we can see more of an impact on these objects when we select those tools. And I'm going to select those spheres again and go back into the alignment tool. And now we can cycle through the different settings, and we can see all the different changes that it makes. So it's a great new alignment tool that combines all the other buttons we used to have before, but now allows us to have one little panel to change all these. And then we can also keep first object in place, which is the first object selected. So always keep that in mind, that sometimes the first object you select is sometimes part of these panels, and you should take a look at them and make sure ahead of time if you're going to be doing some large amounts of selections with more than a couple of different objects.